From origin to legend.
I need to become a symbol. I need to become Batman.
Become the hero.
Someone's gotta step up.
Build the legacy.
Let's get to work. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. I'm allergic to nuts.
Lego Batman, Legacy of the Dark Knight.
This is my favorite part.
Out now on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series XS, and PC.
Rated E10 for ages 10 and up.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Welcome to Why We Roll,
a tabletop role-playing game design podcast by the Stillfleet Studio.
We're your hosts, Chris Pickett, creator of the historical fantasy game Dance Macabre,
and Wythe Marshall, creator of the political sci-fi game Stillfleet.
Through the show, we hope to amplify new creative voices.
We chat with different indie TTRPG designers, talking through a range of questions that are pertinent to many designers, players, and GMs.
We hope to showcase fresh and even challenging ideas about what makes imagination-based games so powerful.
Before we introduce today's guest, a reminder. If you enjoy this episode, please consider supporting the show and all of our games over at patreon.com/Stillfleet.
Okay, let's find out why we roll.
And we're live with Why We Roll, the tabletop game design podcast from Stillfleet Studio with Wythe Marshall and...
Hey, Chris Pickett.
Sean Ireland. Oh shit!
Hell yeah!
No, that was great.
No, that was perfect. We've never had a guest
perfect.
jump into that part before, but I liked that. I think we should start prepping everybody that way.
We really should.
I'm just so hot to trot.
You've invented a new trope that we always do now. Thanks, Sean. Yes, that's right. Sean Ireland, special guest. And this is the end of season 2, beginning of season 3. Maybe, I don't know if you're listening when this comes out.
It's a little bit.
It's the end of the year.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. So for the podcast, this is not the end of season 2. The end of season 2 will be dropping soon. But for video feed, yes, anybody watching, this is it for 2025. So get it while you can.
Great. Well, tonight we're excited to talk to Sean and catch up and just say hi and hear about all the things you have going on in games and otherwise, and close out the show for the year in terms of taping. And of course, if you're listening to this later, then, you can imagine the things you were doing in December and enjoying with your friends and family, hopefully. Before we go any further, why don't we do a little introduction? Sean, can you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what do you do in games? What brings you to games?
Happy to. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm Sean Ireland and I'm here. I'm a game designer and a professional GM. I was a designer on Triangle Agency and a co-founder of Haunted Table, the company that produced the TTRPG Triangle Agency. If you're not familiar, that is a game of paranormal investigation and corporate horror. And I'm very happy to say that a lot of people have been finding it and the community has been growing. And there's been a lot of really, really wonderful sort of wind at our back moving forward. So I'm in a position where now my job is producing additional content for the future of Triangle Agency. I can get deeper into that if you like, but that feels like it. How's that as a summary?
That's perfect.
That's a good place to start. Yeah, that's a good place to start. And yeah, I mean, one of the first things that we usually ask folks, after a nice introduction such as that one is, how did you get into tabletop role playing games? Like, what was your start, and how did you get to the point where you were designing your own system, your own setting, all of that?
Yeah, the journey begins when I was 13 years old, and my older brother banditeered me. He impressed me into service as the GM for him and his friends.
You were an indentured GM.
I was, you know how older brothers do to younger brothers. Sometimes you get called in to active duty as the GM for a bunch of people who won't ever be bothered to read the playbook.
Sure.
I learned early and often that I just needed to have a firm hand in guiding the story. So that was the inception of it, and I like fell in love with making the story and sharing the story, and they all bounced off of it pretty quickly, but I didn't let it deter me. The transition from that to designing games as a whole was mostly in continuing to run D&D, and specifically running D&D as a paid GM for children on a daily basis, which is what I was doing in 2019. Just forced me to, within the boundaries of D&D, push myself in every direction as a storyteller and as a crafter of game-based experience. And before long, I was just completely outside of the bounds of what D&D offers and designing games. The actual jump from this is something that I'm doing for a private audience to this is something that we're going to try to publish was my dear friend, co-writer, and co-founder of Haunted Table, Caleb Zane Huett. He and I were working together at a board game cafe in the same department, running D&D for kids. When the pandemic shut that all down, we turned to each other, and just partially as a way to keep sane, partially as a way to keep in touch because he moved across the country, and partially because we were both really, really fascinated by the idea. We just sat down, started writing, and then it hit a sort of horizon where we were like, wait a second. This could be real, and we want it to be real.
That's how I feel like that's how a lot of people get started, right? They get pressed into service as GMs by force, and then later they have an idea, and there's this economic moment of like, I should do this, or I can do this, or fuck it, I'll do it anyway, kind of thing. There's some tipping point in Klineman that leads you to say, let me publish the game. And I often think there are these small teams that really egg each other on. So maybe we can ask a little about your role, Caleb's role, how did Triangle Agency come to be in sort of more depth. But yeah, it sounds like many people we've had on the show, you're in the world of D&D and you're like, this is fine, but I have other ideas. And around that same time, there was a big boom, obviously, around comparatively, historically, in like 2010, but there was a really big boom with COVID. That's when you really see this Cambrian explosion of cool games. So I feel like Chris and I are coming out of that same milieu. So it's interesting. It's interesting to think about all the different little groups of people pairing off at cafes being like, what if D4s? What if D12?
Yeah. And I guess I would also just highlight that for anybody who heard my story and felt like a twinge of familiarity, that the scope of that story was 20 years, like between when I was impressed into service and when I was like, hey, wait a second, this could be something.
Yeah. And I think that's also, like sometimes you're playing games as kids and it's not until later you're like, this game could be not just a game, right? It could be a product or a whole experience, a whole world. Can you say a little can you dig into like Triangle Agency specifically and like what game design was looking like for you going from D&D for kids as a GM to like, I'm making a game? Like, was there a clear moment? Was there a process? How did that unfold?
I would say that there was a clear moment. Yes, there was a clear moment. It was Caleb came to me with a tweet that he had made that was doing numbers at the moment, and he said, "What if I made?" He had posted a graphic he had made because he was tinkering in InDesign, and it is largely the exact same logo that we still use today for Triangle Agency. He had tweeted that, and the tweet was like, "Who wants to play my new game?" Sort of like brute forcing it into existence. And he turned to, and on that day, he turned to me and he said, what if you played my new game Triangle Agency? And I said, haha, it could be this and this and this. And he said, haha, and then it could be this and this and this. And in essence, brushing over a great amount of detail, that conversation continued for the next 3 years, where it was just a very, very fortunate creative partnership of constant fuel, one thing leading to the other.
And would you say you knew mechanically where you wanted to go from the start, or how did you get into like what you wanted to do in terms of, or even like paranormal situations? Did you say like, I love X-Files, I'm going to do X-Files stuff?
Right. We knew from the jump that we wanted to give players enormous reality shaping powers and restrict their ability to use it in a narrative way rather than a mechanical way. And I think just exploring that tension gave us a huge amount of runway and a huge amount of design space. But it also meant that we were writing the story at the same time as we were writing the mechanics, where so many things need to line up. There are a lot of guardrails that you need to set up if you're going to hand players the ability to summon 11,000 Toyotas.
It's a classic. It sits right up there with dwarves being good with an axe. Is summoning 11,000 Toyotas.
11,000 Priuses. I find that the notion of narrative restrictions, not mechanical restrictions, to be really interesting. And I have a bunch of questions, but I guess one of them is, could you give us an example of how that would work in Triangle Agency? What's like a narrative restriction on a power, and how have you seen that kind of play out either in playtesting or now that it's being widely adopted, just with play groups?
Yes. I think for me, the flagship example of this is a currency and a system called demerits, which is every character starts with a behavior, basically a role at the company that gives them a restricted behavior. It's called a sanctioned behavior that you are meant to avoid while on the job. Example, if you're in public relations, you are not allowed to lie. If, while you're playing Triangle Agency, as a public relations character, you ever lie, you earn 1 demerit. Very common first question is, well, what does that mean? What do demerits do? And if you read the player's handbook, the answer is kind of, don't earn them. Like, you're not supposed to. It's your job not to earn them.
Sure, yeah.
Why are you asking questions? But I've found personally, and I've heard stories, that people hear the word demerit, and it is a scary enough word, and it looms large enough. And I think they have a personal relationship to that kind of thing, that kind of dark mark on their permanent record, that they know to avoid it. And that often is enough to make people want to avoid those behaviors like the player.
Yeah.
But have you thought of, have you brought this into the world of kind of paranoia, where like it is meant to be a joke in your mind with the text, the player's handbook? Do you feel like these are things the player is meant to encounter as a joke or take seriously? Or can you say a little more about like designing something that doesn't have a clear purpose in a game? Because this is really fascinating.
Well, so I don't want to say that it doesn't have a clear purpose in the game. The core rulebook that is Triangle Agency is divided into 3 sections. The first is meant to be read by players, and then players stop. The middle section is for GMs, and then the third section is only meant to be read by people when certain game actions happen. So if you are playing it for the first time as a player and you're following all of the rules, you've only read enough to learn that there is a thing called demerits, and that if you get enough of them, it's going to be bad, but you don't have any clearer of a picture than that. So to me, that is, I think the clearest flagship example of designing a narrative punishment, like a narrative rein to to somebody's mechanical powers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super interesting. Hold on one second. Okay, I think that's super interesting, and yeah, I agree. There is a personal connection that people have to the permanent record, to the credit score, to the employee dossier that feels like it's just attached to you for your entire life. And I wonder if that personal connection is a part of why Triangle Agency speaks to so many people and is taking off, because it is this corporate horror, right? This like kind of exploration of what that looks like, what that means, how it relates to our actual daily lives. And I'm curious, Sean, how would you and your co-author describe corporate horror, and how did you kind of land on that as like the genre of the game?
It was in there from the jump. Like the initial conversation was absolutely, why aren't there TTRPGs that feel like Control? Why aren't there more TTRPGs that feel like we didn't know it at the time. Severance didn't exist at the time, but I think we were yearning for exactly that energy. So that was part of the initial assumption. From the jump, we were organizing this game around that idea of a workplace that is hostile towards you and hates you, and it will never explain why. An additional layer of context there is that Caleb and I spent a lot of time working at a job together that we did not like in the immediate lead up. Like our friendship was forged in lengthy conversations about how bad our workplace was and how we could make it better. And so we had our friendship was an incubator for that kind of discussion for like 6 months. And then we had this old pandemic.
Yeah. And not to name any workplaces, but I do know there's some union activity, some good things that may have come out of that. But yeah.
Yes. I'm sorry to say I can't claim any credit for that, but I have an immense amount of solidarity and happiness and pride that workplace has successfully unionized. I'm really happy for them. How would I define corporate horror? Again, we all have these touchstones, right? Like the Severance of it all. Joe versus the Volcano, probably, from how I hear people talk about it. It is, I don't want to get too highfalutin about it. I just think it is our modern version of cosmic horror. It's like our accessible daily version of cosmic horror, where there are these forces that are real, that are in our world, called Coca-Cola and Mondelez and Johnson & Johnson, that are eldritch level beings that have immense power to reshape our world around us, and who will never explain their motives and who will never explain their means. And we have no choice but to cower and run if their attention ever lands on us.
It's almost funny to think about corporations as if they're like the gods of chaos from like the Warhammer universes, right? Where it's like just enough people put enough willpower or emotion into a thing, and then it becomes real and a tangible like force for evil in the world.
Yeah, that's like gods in general in a lot of mythology, a lot of anthropology. So it's kind of one-to-one with anthropological critique of capitalism. You know, the Komarovs or whatever, that liberalism has produced a world where those things are the things into which we create fetishes, out of which we create fetishes, which is, from Marx, that after the Great Acceleration, like the branding of it is everywhere. So it's not even like I'm a steel worker, I make metal. It's like people have these very specific corporate identities, and to your point, it strikes a tone with anyone who has a job, because you hate it. We all hate it, but we also still have that identity. So what do you do? Oh, I work for such a company. Oh, okay. How's that? And it is kind of how people create their societies, in the way that, like in Warhammer, people create societies around literally like Cthulhuic beings they worship or whatever. So I do think that's an interesting comparison, that it's like you could see, lines of that leading up to this moment. But I do agree with you, Sean. That's almost like a really new thing in genre fiction that's emerged in the 2000s. It's like this merger of horror and sort of the corporate world in a way that I don't think you saw that. It was way too rosy of a time in media, at least in the 80s and 90s, to like have movies or have had properties like even, and not just Severance, but like that is like the ultimate example, right? So I think Triangle Agency is one of a number of games that are touching on these themes, but I think it's fun to see all the ways that people are sort of taking apart working a job and making the loops a little different. So the job is no longer like fighting goblins because that's heroic. And it's more like, how do I survive the fact I have to have a job, which is much closer to home and much weirder and more horrible. So I don't know, can you say a little about how you went about designing the corporate horror mechanically and in terms of those, and when I say mechanically, I also include the narrative props, like you're saying, that the contours of the game, right?
Yeah. One thing that's floating to me right now is that something critical to making a game that puts you in such an antagonistic relationship with this company, something crucial about making that work is about making it tempting and about making it appealing in some dimensions. And mirroring real life in 2020, at the same time as the pandemic hit, I got chosen by one of these eldritch gods. I got my first full-time tech job in my entire life. And so I went from being a struggling freelancer to being a six-figure guy who answers emails all day. And I felt very directly suffused with power in a way that felt daily like every power fantasy I'd seen across TTRPGs. Like I felt ascended. I felt like I had been chosen for citizen status.
You turned into a paladin.
I turned into a paladin. I had an oath. I had an oath of attendance where I needed to be on Slack for 8 hours a day.
You take an oath of silence. It's just an NDA.
Genuinely, yes. That is precisely the attitude and energy that is in the book and was in our discussions at that time.
Well, I mean, when you're thinking about game design, you're going in with these are maybe you don't have to be it this way. I'm paraphrasing, so you tell me, but one could imagine you're simulating different loops. And so what are the things you're simulating or different themes you want to evoke? And you have players with avatars, some level of agency, they're doing things in environment. So you've settled on corporate horror. You know that you want to have this kind of paranoia play with information, and there's systems that unlock later as you read the book, as narrative moments happen. But what are some ways in which you were like, how do I simulate corporate horror, right? Specifically, what did that mean to you as a designer?
Yes.
As opposed to many of us have simulated at some point in our lives as GMs making shit up, fantasy, right? And okay, swords or spells or something. So in this case, you're talking about sort of the corporate world, and it is a little. I mean, again, having done this a little myself, it's okay, there's different ebbs and flows. And you mentioned demerits already, but what are some other ways just to talk about the game that this kind of comes out, right? That you guys settle on?
Yeah. So again, drawing from these Slumdog Millionaire style moments in my life that then got dragged into the design process. Again, at this tech job, there were rituals that I had never been privy to. As I was a lone wolf solo freelancer getting thrown into this manager team based structure. So I had these morning stand-up meetings every day where people would just stand in a circle and talk about what we had done yesterday. And for me, it was blisteringly boring, and it felt like going to church as a kid and just going through this ritual. Why? Because it's the ritual. There is a thing in Triangle Agency where it's called morning meetings. It's the first phase of play. And it's meant to do a lot of the same work that a lot of GMs sort of will ad hoc or invent for themselves eventually, that recap style previously on, or a montage of here's where we see our heroes at the start. That's formalized. It's baked into the Triangle Agency play loop, where whether you have something to talk about or not, people who play always have something to talk about, but you are instructed that you must have these meetings before you get into the meat of play.
That's great. That's a good example of bringing in the kind of corporate loop and giving players the tools to do something with it. And I do agree that it is funny that more games don't do that. I feel like I've heard of other games doing this, but I really think all games, it's almost like safety tools. We should just adopt next time, like last time on, next time on. Like there should be bookends, because not for the characters, because it makes no sense, but for the players, you might be playing weeks apart, months apart, and you're like, I don't really remember, dog, who, like, what happened? Did we find the giant? Did we kill the giant? Is the giant cool? So
am I the giant?
Am I the giant?
Yeah.
And also
You've been the whole time
to take on the structure of those boring meetings and use that time to do something useful is a nice twofer, where you're like doing something not boring with a structure that cues up the horror for the characters, right? Not the players are doing something useful. The characters are like, oh my God, this, So again, there's a lot in there, and feel free to keep talking about Triangle Agency. Just trying to highlight, some of the reasons people should check it out, because it's a cool game, and it's part of, I think, again, a suite of games that are, I would say, I don't know, Sean, this is a question. Here's a spicy, potentially political question. Is the game anti-capitalist as such, or do you view somehow corporatism as like, one bad actor, but it's not anti-capitalist as a sort of structure? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that I ascribe to death of the author. I think the author is dead. I don't think that I should be viewed as a like authority on how you interpret the game. And it's ardently, stridently, top to toe anti-capitalist the entire time.
Tip to
I think
tail.
More than that, tip to tail, the whole dang thing. More than that, though, I think the most radical thing about the book is that it expects you to make up your mind about what the book is. We devoted so much energy, and it feels like a miracle that we were able to pull it off, but contained a satisfying story, a cool system, and a great game without ever sitting down and telling you the truth. There are unreliable narrators everywhere you look, and that forces you as a player to decide for yourself who to believe.
Yeah, I like that.
And I think that like empowering you to make those decisions, forcing you to make those decisions, empowers you to make those decisions. And being empowered to make those decisions is a radical act in modern society.
I think that's also, again, a really interesting approach to game design, to not tell people everything, and to have that be at the heart of the game, which obviously, again, like Paranoia, or there's examples of this, but generally games tend toward the opposite of, there's a deeper lore, it's tip of the iceberg, so we're going to only give you 10%, but there's another 90% of lore. But there are games that just refuse that, or really ask you to consider, what if this is all bullshit? Which is one of the things I'll say, like, I think Stillfleet does as well, but it almost is like, it's buried too deep for some people to get to the, like, it's all bullshit part. So I think that Triangle Agency is a really nice balance of, like, kind of letting you, the wink wink, while it is still playable and fun, as you say. So it's a balancing act, and I think different games can approach it differently, but it is fun to have games that truly contain, in a way, real mysteries, in addition to, like, real, what do you want to do about your shitty job kind of moments, which, that's the narrative structure we're seeing emerge all over the place. Sean, are you working on any other games, or right now is it all Triangle Agency all the time, which is would be totally fair and fine, but I'm just curious if you have some other bangers rattling around in there.
That's the kindest thing anybody said to me in a very long time. So we, as Haunted Table, we just announced at PAX our upcoming slate of projects, which does include a fully new non-Triangle Agency project called Tiny Wizard, about a small wizard who lives in your house. Right now I'm working on, ages ago, back when we kickstarted Triangle Agency, we pledged to produce a series of crossover missions where you could play other games set in the Triangle Agency universe. And one of those games is called The House Edge. It's a crossover with Fist, a game by Claymore. And we received an incredible game from Claymore that was so good that we decided to beef it up. And that has been the bulk of my work recently, is finding out what this roguelike TTRPG could become.
Interesting. I mean, I'm a huge fan of roguelikes, which some people who listen might already know. It's something I talked about with Lauren Belanco as well, who's a big NetHack fan. Turns out I'm a Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup guy myself. But I am curious. That's something I've thought about a lot, is like, how do you take that experience of a roguelike and port it either? I've thought about it as an arcade experience, but also as like a tabletop role-playing game experience. And I mean, I think the thing that I always come back to is that it just feels like it would be a solo journaling game. So I'm curious to see where y'all go with that and how you kind of like incorporate roguelike elements. Like, is it a generative, is it randomly generated every time you go in? What does that kind of look or feel like? I don't know if you can say as of now.
I can speak to a few of those points. Yeah. It is in fact a randomly generated, let's call it a dungeon. It's a randomly generated dungeon that's generated by flipping over cards from a 52 card deck. So you shuffle the deck and you array the rooms as you go through them, and the rooms that you have begin as luck of the draw, and then you develop abilities to manipulate which cards you have access to.
Yeah, very cool. That sounds awesome. I mean, again, reality warping powers that you're giving to your players, really trying to drive home that agency. Yeah. What are you
What can
do?
I say? Yeah. What can I do? I am what I am,
And Fist is a great power fantasy game that really gets at, I think, a certain era of action movie that I grew up with. It has a very 70s, 80s vibe, even while it has science fictional elements. There's cyborgic stuff, but a lot of the powers are just like, you're just too freaking strong, or you have the coolest bazooka. It has a really kind of good cadence of like short, well-described, sort of abilities. So I'm curious to see how that plays with the Triangle Agency vibe, because they're slightly different vibes, but I can really see one fitting in the other. Almost like if X-Files had done a crossover with like a Jean-Claude Van Damme, like they'd done a movie together, and it was like kind of the X-Files, but also like just shooting things with bazookas and pretending to be Cajun and, the things that we expect.
And I think describing it as also a power fantasy is exactly something that's been a real shift for me, going from Triangle Agency to this project called The House Edge and working using Fist as the system, is that they are both power fantasies. They're both about superpowered individuals working to take on superpowered threats. But the consequences and like the restrictions around using your powers are so different. In Fist, the stakes get raised when you find somebody who's got a bigger gun, or when the enemy has outsmarted you or outflanked you or taken advantage of your lack of resources. In Triangle Agency, the stakes get raised when your boss finds out what you've been doing. It's just a different paradigm for thinking about consequences.
Which isn't that necessarily, I mean, there may be perpendicular as opposed to opposed, because there are elements of the not all cinema about power has moments of people shooting each other from helicopters. I mean, a lot of it is like a good spy story. There's a threat of violence and death. Like if you think of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, there's a serious threat of being like assassinated by your own agency or something. But like, it's much more just informational, and it is much more like, does your boss know what you're up to, or who you really are? So it's about power and death, but it doesn't show it in with glowing cyborg bazooka arms or something. It shows it a different way. And I think again, sometimes in games we get caught up, or I'm not you, but lesser design, people could get caught up in thinking about the forms, and the forms are infinite. And it's really like, what are the things you're trying to do socially? What are the tilts you want at the table? And if you're doing informational tilts around work and bosses, I think that could work really well to kind of reskin a bunch of ways. And again, I think you're onto something. I think there's definitely a kind of zeitgeist moment, where a lot of us are like, man, if only I could change this relationship I have with my boss and the company, capital C. So very cool. So you're working on the Fist thing. You're working on a tiny wizard game. Is this a team, if you don't mind me asking, Sean? Is it you and Caleb and others? Is it mostly you? How does that sort of shake out?
Yeah, it's mostly Caleb managing a pretty broad tent. I would say there may be between 5 and 10 people spread across various different projects in different capacities. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Just curious how you, who is, I don't know. I mean, I know you. I don't really know how you guys design games and stuff. And I know that Triangle Agency is a big thing now. So I was curious with the new games, is that like Sean Skunk Works, or like you guys get together and say, okay, we're all tiny wizards. We've got the Shrinkinator. We're going to shrink down.
No, right now, because we have so many plates spinning, it's very much more Skunk Works, share out, playtest, Skunk Works, share out, playtest. Which is an evolution. It feels more mature than, the heady earliest days where it was just all contained in a single Discord conversation.
Right. It's one thread to rule them all. Yeah. Right. Which bullet point 700 threads up or posts up.
Where there's an era of my Discord feed with Caleb where it's like talking about my birthday party, talking about new powers for the Dream agent, talking about something funny we saw on Twitter.
I guess that kind of brings me I guess this is a logistical thing, but something that we also try to get to on the show is just giving tips, giving advice for people that want to get into this industry, whether it's design or running a business. I don't know if you have any advice that you would want to give on like moving from the kind of like hobbyist side of things into a kind of more serious workflow and seeing your responsibilities change with that.
I would say to anybody who is interested in going from I have ideas to I have a game, the two most important things that I see again and again, and I'm going to call out Caleb as I think uniquely good at these in my experience, is A, asking people for help. Just walking up to people that you like and respect and being clear about like, I'm working on this or I'm trying to do this. I see that you do this. Is there anything like, how can you help? Again, I'm bad at it. I don't know how to frame the question in a way that will yield results, but just like not arguing, not negotiating against yourself, just reaching for the thing that you want. So asking people for help, and then also be honest about what end goal you have, and look around at other existing properties and projects and organizations exist right now and see if you can find their paper trail, see how they organized their Kickstarter, see how they updated people when they were fulfilling their initial campaign. Reach out to them and see if they have any pointers for you. We've been so lucky. A lot of people in the industry, I'll shout out Tony Vicinda in particular, were extremely instrumental early on in like helping us understand what it even took to create a game, understand what aspects from design to production needed to be even considered. The short version of the answer is just talk to people. Don't be shy.
And talk to Tony Vicinda. That's a good specific person.
I was going to say the thread that binds everybody together just seems to be Big Tony. So there you go.
Big Tony. No, that's really good advice. I do think that to your point, it's sometimes a matter of articulation, right? Because a lot of us have people we know on the internet who are cool, and you might shout them out and they might be like, thanks. And that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But it is, if you're a creator trying to get a specific outcome, what do you articulate? What are you asking for? And what does that look like? And I think that's sometimes just very non-obvious. And you're like, okay, I have a big idea. What do I need to achieve it? Do you need resources of some kind? Do you need more time? Or is it about like mechanics, right? Like, do you need play testers? How do you run big community games on Discord? There's so many aspects to like, I'm going to start publishing games or make a big adventure game, right? That has different players. And I think it can definitely be intimidating. And I think that's one reason on the show, it's been great to have on so many people who've done it different ways, but see the sort of points of the patterns, right? The points of connection. So I think that's a really nice gesture to say, ask for what you want, advocate for yourself, and be cool. And usually it seems like, in my experience, many people in the space are very nice in the indie space. Not talking about all games, but our little world. Sean, would you say that is true? And would you, I don't know, is there anything you want to add to that in terms of sort of getting started?
Sean's like, no, people are terrible and I hate them all.
I think that I've been amazed based on the pop culture conception of a TTRPG person, how far removed that has been from my lived experience. You know, like there's the Simpsons comic book guy that lives in a lot of people's heads when they think about people who play D&D, and almost everybody I've met in the tabletop space has at the very least been enthusiastic and like eager and excited to talk.
And not the Simpsons guy.
And not I guess to make a more accessible way to frame that, there's not been a lot of gatekeeping. There's not been a lot of reneging. There's not been a lot of people who like want to put you down,
right, so
that they can like get one over on you. It's been a very much a rising tide feeling in my experience.
That was kind of the point, is who have you, has that been your experience shared as well, that people are very generous with often time and resources, though maybe not. The thing that seems to be missing often is literally just like money, but I feel like everything else, it's like you could just ask and people would be like, yeah, sure, here you go. So we've been very pleasantly surprised, I think, as well. Mm-hmm. With that, so you're working on all these cool things for Triangle Agency, both the game and that you have some new games, Tiny Wizards. What else? I feel like you mentioned some cool stuff you were doing in New York. Is there anything else, Sean, you want to mention outside of games that you're working on, or anything cool you have a brewing?
Sure. Yes. I produce and perform in a live show in New York City. A live show in New York City, and also we've been touring. We had a show in Philly and we had a show in Boston this past year.
Nice.
It's called The Legend of You. It's a personalized, improvised adventure. Every performance begins with us asking an audience member to share a simple problem in their life, and then we turn that problem into an epic fantasy story. It's inspired by D&D. It's inspired by musical improv. It's inspired by your most recent therapy session. And it's been a real joy. The team that we've thrown together is incredible. And yeah, if anybody's interested to learn more, we're on Instagram, and tickets are available for our January show now.
Oh, hell yeah.
Cool.
Incredible. I mean, yeah. I have to ask if it's a stage show that's, inspired by D&D as well as my most recent trip to the therapist. Are there gamified elements that you've put into it, or has your game design influenced the show? Like how has that kind of been brought mm-hmm. brought onto the stage? How does it tread the boards, as they say?
So there is a game to it. At the beginning of the show, we have, if you've seen any like New York style improv show, it will often begin with an interview with an audience member where we just like sort of like pick at the story, learn about characters in their life, learn about the circumstance that they came to us with. But then we also go through a bulleted list of specific strengths and weaknesses. Questions like, what's something that's always come naturally to you? What's the thing you've received the most training to do? What would we put as bait if we wanted to catch you in a trap? Things like that. Those answers get written on a novelty 6-sided die that's got whiteboard faces.
Nice.
And so the faces will be like peanut butter, whistling, neuroscience, and those each correspond to a strength or a weakness. In the story, when the hero encounters a monster or an obstacle or a villain, we'll roll that die, and that's the tactic that they use to overcome the challenge.
I love that. First of all, sorry, we should be talking about your show and what happens in it, but it's just the props. I want a big die that has dry erase. Like I want to write on a giant die and just roll it around. That seems fun. It could be anything.
It could be anything.
Did you make that?
Yeah. Yeah, his name is Cubert because he's a cube. Yeah, no, it was an iterative process because originally this show started as a seed of an idea, also in 2019. So this was a pre-pandemic joint, and back then the die was a D20, and it was essentially playing Dungeons and Dragons on stage. But took a long pandemic long break, and when we came back to the idea, we realized that there was something a little inert about assigning a number to people's problems. There's something like judgmental about it. There was a disconnect there, and went back to the drawing board, applied some game design to it, and came back with no, these strengths and weaknesses that people are describing should be what we see on stage, and we just sailed off from there.
That's very cool. Yeah, I like that you kept the aleatory, like it's a random, there's a prop for randomization, but you're now making it vocalized through the audience members' world. They're doing this sort of fiasco playset thing, and you're pulling those pieces. So it's a traditional improv thing in that sense of like, yeah, give me a number, give me a color, give me an occupation, but you're taking more narrative props from sort of running D&D and working with that. Well, I got to see it. I didn't know you were in Philly. I might not have moved here yet, but we got to work out the dates. January 31st. Everyone heard it here. Maybe not first, but they heard it here. January 31st, New York City, Sean Ireland. That's cool. Are you going to do that sort of on and off forever? Like, I remember you were excited about it, but it sounded like something, it sounds like something that's hard to organize maybe, or like how many times, like it's not the kind of thing where you're doing a run of every week, a couple of them a week, right? Or is that a goal?
That's a goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
This past year, we've been performing once a month, and that's afforded us the opportunity to learn a lot about what the show wants to be. And this summer, oh my God, this winter, this month, we are currently in a period where we're sort of like taking a break from performing and looking inward and sort of renovating the show, so that by January we're ready to proceed with what works and to leave behind what doesn't.
Cool. Well, we look forward to hearing more about it, and probably it'll get more and more media coverage, and or maybe Chris and I'll have to figure out a way to make the trip out and bring our therapy problems to your improv show. I just keep thinking I'm just picturing Taskmaster, but they're like playing Triangle Agency, which now that I say those words, I'm like, I really want to watch the Taskmaster guys play, some corporate horror.
I would pay money to watch Greg Davies and Alex Horn play Triangle Agency. That would be very funny to me.
Yeah.
It would be the last thing I do, because I would then die of happiness. It would be incredible.
Oh, that's so sad. Funny. Brooklyn artist dies of happiness. Neurologists rush to the scene. It's like a totally new thing.
Yeah, they say his heart grew 3 sizes that day, and it was horrific.
It burst out of his chest.
It's eldritch. Yeah. It's also D4 shaped. Yeah.
It's caltrop shaped.
Very Cronenberg.
Oh my God.
Well, on that happy note, Sean, are there some other things you wanted to talk about that we've not gotten to? We covered Triangle Agency's rad. You do other rad stuff. There's also Tiny Wizards. I just like saying Tiny Wizards.
Tiny Wizards, yeah.
Nothing that. No, this has been really wonderful.
That's
I
it.
do have one thing to talk about, but it's something that's ending like in the next 3 weeks, so I don't want to put us on that clock.
I mean,
Do you want to shout it out anyway? Just
sure.
It's a cool
yeah.
thing. Like,
it's a cool thing. So it's a community run. It's a community run magazine within the Triangle Agency community. In our Discord, some of our fans have put together not a mechanical supplement necessarily, but just a fanzine that they've been calling for submissions for. And the things that I've already seen be contributed have been really, really wonderful. It's just like weird people that you can meet at work, or a bar that your characters can all meet at that like has corporate themed specials. making Triangle Agency has been so meaningful, and connecting with people who've played it and have enjoyed their time playing it has been one of the greatest joys of my life. And this little project is a material representation of that. And so it's special for me. And I genuinely think anybody who is interested in Triangle Agency is also going to like it. But also, by the time you're listening to this, it's not something you can contribute to, but something you can consume.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is even if the window for contributions is closed, we can at least point people towards it. And who knows? I mean, that sounds like a really fun project. It sounds like something that could happen even regularly with a little bit of community organizing. Somebody just driving that forward. Once a quarter, put out the employee magazine, the corporate. I actually did
give out the gold stars.
Yeah, I did work at a place. The only corporate job I've ever had was at a biotech company in Boston for a very brief period of time. And I wasn't doing anything cool. I was doing logistics, so shipping basically. But they did indeed have a quarterly corporate magazine that they would put out and be like, "This is what's happening at XYZ company." Which I always just found so disturbing. Who is asking for this? Why does it exist? It's just a cursed object that is in the world. So yeah, a model to go after.
Well, there you go. That's a good name for the magazine, The Cursed Object. No, that's great. And I do think, Sean, it's really touching. And that is some of the coolest shit when you make a game. And if enough people play it, they just do their own things and they do them together. And in a way, it's the weird moment of they don't need you, which is the proud parent moment of you don't need me to authorize this or make it official. It is official because you did it. And I have to shout out, Vex correctly pointed out in the niceness. This was when we were talking about how nice people are, that we needed help with web design and someone just started doing it. And it was a great moment of it's really nice to have people aware of a game enough and who are interested enough in playing it or whatever to just fix the problems without they're just whatever, I'll just do it, so that we can all play this game together, right? So I think it's really cool to hear about a magazine developing, which is even more, there's all the sorts of things that go into that. So I'm curious to see what those pieces are of the extended community Triangle Agency world. And congrats. And yeah, if you're listening to this after the deadline, like Chris said, maybe there'll be another one. So join the Discord, right? With that, anything else you want to shout out, or should we turn it over to Chris for our final question of the evening?
I say turn it over.
All right. Final question of the evening, Sean. Where can folks find you online? Where can they find Triangle Agency online? What are your pluggables, and how can we best support you and Haunted Table moving forward?
What a magnificent question. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
People can learn more about Triangle Agency by going to hauntedtable.games. From there, you can go to our online store. You can find our Discord community. You can learn everything that you need to know about us and our projects. To find more of me, I'm on Instagram and Blue Sky at Sean Ireland like the country. And I think the best thing that you can do is talk to your coworkers about forming a union.
Hell yeah. All right, let's go.
Yeah, let's fucking go. You heard it here first. This is the first time anyone's ever had this idea. No, this is great. Sean, that was really the answer. We do. We need white collar unions. We need all the unions. We need all of the service people to be unionized, all the educators, all the game makers, and the people who play the games. Sure. Also. Thanks so much, Sean. Thanks for being on. Have to have you back on, talk more about the intersection of improv, cosmic horror, and corporate horror, and the triangle that forms. Chris, any last thoughts before we bid adieu to another big year? This was a crazy long season with so many great interviews. We really, honestly, I can't say enough thank you. We had too many interviews. We had too many people.
Yeah, we actually did.
So many of them we'll talk to next year. Yeah. So thanks, Chris, for engineering it all and, putting up with crazy scheduling. So
yeah, my pleasure. I guess, just closing us out for the year. Thank you, Wythe, as always, for scheduling all of our interviews and getting everything kind of organized and lined up. And Sean, thank you for being here tonight. Pleasure finally meeting you. Hopefully I'll see you around in New York City. We've got some overlap, so maybe I'll see you at Wonderville. And yeah, just thank you everybody who is watching, everybody who has been listening to the show. We really appreciate y'all. It's a love of the game kind of project. We're not making any money off of this, but we just like talking to people. We like putting this stuff out there. So thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. And yeah, have a good rest of your 2025. We'll see you next year, suckers.
Until then.
Yeah.
Until then. And this time it's like Old Lang Syne instead of Sam's theme song. No, it's Sam's theme song. It's great. Okay.
Thank you guys so much. This has been really great.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for listening to Why We Roll.
Our theme music is by the brilliant Sam Tyndall and Arpline.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find us on all social media at Stillfleet. You can find out more about Danse Macabre, Stillfleet, and all of our games over at stillfleet.com.